Sharks. For centuries, they've been the monsters of the sea. Razor teeth, unblinking eyes, and the smell of blood pulling them from the depths. To most sailors, the very sight of a shark's fins slicing through the waves was enough to send chills down the spine. But pirates? Pirates didn't flinch. These men lived with danger every single day. Storms, starvation, cannon fire, betrayal. Compared to that, a shark was just another obstacle. In fact, for many pirates, sharks were less terrifying than hunger or the hangman's noose. Captured sailors often wrote about their fear of sharks, following ships for days, waiting for bodies thrown overboard. But pirates laughed. They mocked the sharks, even used them as tools of terror, threatening prisoners with being tossed to the sea wolves. Pirates swam in shark waters when they had to. They gutted sharks, ate their flesh, and even wore their teeth as trophies. To them, the ocean's deadliest predator was not something to fear. It was something to fight, exploit, or simply ignore. So why weren't pirates afraid of sharks when everyone else was? Because pirates lived closer to death than any shark ever could deliver. For them, the real monsters were not beneath the waves, but aboard their own ships. This is the untold truth. How pirates turned the fear of sharks into just another part of their brutal, fearless lives. To the average sailor, sharks were monsters. Sailors told stories of sharks that could smell a drop of blood from miles away, or that followed ships like ghosts, waiting for men to fall. Superstitions painted them as demons of the deep. Some crews even claimed that sharks had a magical sixth sense, able to predict when death was near. A shark swimming beside your ship wasn't just bad luck, it was an omen. But pirates? They laughed at such tales. They didn't have the luxury of fear. For men who raided warships, faced cannon fire, and survived mutiny, a shark was just another hazard. Pirates even turned shark myths into weapons of intimidation. Prisoners were threatened with being tossed overboard into waters swarming with fins. The thought alone often broke men faster than torture. And when food ran low, pirates didn't avoid sharks. They hunted them. Spears, harpoons, even pistols were used to drag the beasts onto the deck. Their flesh was tough and foul, but edible. Their teeth were prized as trophies, worn like medals of fearlessness. This was the pirate difference. Where most sailors saw a nightmare, pirates saw opportunity. Sharks weren't demons to them. They were just another enemy to conquer, another tool to use, another legend to twist into fear. In a world where death lurked everywhere, pirates knew one truth. The shark was not the most dangerous predator on the seas. They were. To understand why pirates weren't afraid of sharks, you must see what they were themselves. Predators. Sharks hunt with teeth. Pirates hunted with cannon fire, pistols and blades. Sharks tore into flesh. Pirates tore into ships, towns, and men. And unlike sharks, pirates didn't just kill for hunger. They killed for power, for terror, and for gold. To sailors, a shark in the water was frightening. But to anyone sailing trade routes, a black flag on the horizon was far worse. Pirates could destroy a man's fortune, his ship, his crew, and his life in a single day. In fact, sharks often followed pirate ships, not because pirates were prey, but because they left corpses floating in their wake. Executed prisoners, drowned sailors, and even unlucky crewmates were dumped overboard. To the sharks, pirates were a steady feast. And this only reinforced the pirate image as masters of the sea. They weren't afraid of sharks because, in their minds, they were the sharks of the human world. Apex predators that no law, no king, and no sea creature could rival. For men who lived with blood on their decks daily, a shark was just another hunter. And in the hierarchy of killers, pirates placed themselves firmly at the top. Pirates were not reckless fools. They knew the dangers of the ocean. And when it came to sharks, they had their tricks. The first rule was avoidance. Pirates rarely swam for pleasure. Men only went into the water when forced, to repair hulls, retrieve cargo, or escape wreckage. And when they did, lookouts scanned the waves for fins. If sharks circled too close, pirates fought back. Harpoons and boarding pikes were their weapons of choice, thrust into the water to drive the beasts away. Some even used pistols, firing into the sea to scare them off. But there were moments when sharks became prey instead of predator. Pirates caught them on hooks baited with scraps of meat, hauling them onto deck. The jaws were hacked out as trophies. The flesh, though tough and foul-tasting, was cooked when food ran low. Even the liver was boiled into oil. Nothing was wasted. Survival sometimes meant brutality. There are tales of pirates slashing the bodies of the dead before throwing them overboard, ensuring the sharks fed on the corpse instead of circling the living. Cruel, but effective. And pirates also knew a strange truth. Sharks were more likely to attack the desperate splashing of a panicked sailor than the calm, steady strokes of a hardened swimmer. Pirates trained themselves to move with controlled, fearless motions. In short, they didn't fear sharks because they understood them. To pirates, sharks weren't monsters. They were rivals. And rivals could be beaten, tricked, or even eaten. Sharks haunted the oceans, and the stories of those who sailed them. For sailors, shark tales were filled with terror. For pirates, they were trophies of pride. There are accounts of pirate crews tossing prisoners overboard just to watch the sharks feed, their screams silenced in the froth of snapping jaws. To pirates, this was both punishment and entertainment, a cruel theater of fear. Other stories tell of men lost in shipwrecks, swimming for shore, only to vanish beneath circling fins. Survivors describe the water boiling red as sharks tore through the desperate. Pirates shrugged at these horrors. To them, this was just the ocean's tax. But not all tales ended in death. Some pirates became legends for fighting sharks and surviving. Stories spread of men wrestling beasts barehanded, stabbing at them with knives as blood clouded the water. One tale even claims a pirate emerged from the sea dragging a shark carcass behind him. Though whether truth or myth, it only added to the image of pirates as fearless predators. Sharks also became symbols in pirate folklore. Just as the skull and crossbones warned of death, the shark fin came to represent inevitable doom. Pirates used this fear, threatening prisoners that sharks would finish what they started. For the outside world, sharks were nightmares. But for pirates, they were part of the stage. Another way to terrify enemies and immortalize themselves as men who feared nothing, not even the ocean's deadliest hunter. Sharks were not what haunted pirates in the dead of night. Their real fears were far more human. The first was starvation. Food spoiled quickly, and when barrels ran empty, men wasted away. Pirates gnawed on rats, leather, and worms rather than face the slow death of hunger. The second was disease. Scurvy rotted their gums, fevers swept through cramped decks, and infected wounds festered until men begged for death. Unlike sharks, these enemies couldn't be fought with cutlasses. Then there was betrayal. A pirate crew lived on loyalty, but mutiny was always one argument away. A drunken quarrel or unfair division of loot could turn shipmates into executioners. The fear of a knife in the back weighed heavier than fins in the water. And finally, the greatest fear of all, the hangman's noose. Pirates could laugh at sharks because, if captured, their fate was far worse. Trial and execution awaited them in every port. The image of bodies swaying on gallows haunted even the boldest captain. So when sharks circled their ships, pirates didn't flinch. They knew there were worse ways to die, slower, crueler, more humiliating. To men who lived with hunger, disease, betrayal, and gallows looming on the horizon, a shark's bite almost seemed merciful. That was the truth of pirate fear. Not of beasts below, but of the world above. For ordinary sailors, sharks were the demons of the sea, a nightmare that swam beneath every voyage, a shadow waiting for the unlucky. But for pirates, sharks were just another part of the ocean. They mocked them, hunted them, and even used them as tools of fear against their enemies. Pirates weren't fearless because they thought sharks were harmless. They were fearless because life had already taught them that worse fates existed. Hunger, disease, betrayal, and the hangman's noose. Those were the real terrors. To pirates, sharks were rivals, apex predators of the deep, and there was respect in that. A shark's fin slicing through the waves was not a curse to them. It was a reminder of what they were themselves, hunters, killers, survivors. And so the legend of pirates grew. They were not just men who defied kings and laws, but men who laughed at the very monsters that terrified the rest of the world. That is why centuries later, the image of a pirate and a shark remains burned into history. Both predators, both feared, both unyielding. And in the end, perhaps that's the real secret. Pirates weren't afraid of sharks, because in the story of the seas, they were the sharks.